Morning all. We're just giving it a minute or two for some more people to join, and then we'll start the session. Morning all. Thanks for joining the session today. I'm going to start. It's quite a packed session, so yeah, thanks for those of you taking the time out to review the session. We are going to record it, and then like the last session, for those of you that attended the AI session, what we're going to do is if there's time later, at the end of the session, we'll do a questions overview. There is a short poll. But what we'll also do is reach out to the individuals that attended to see if you'd like more info on 2026 R1. So today's sessions, we're going to cover Acumatica 2026 R1. So this was released in March. It's one of their bigger releases, and I'll go through some of the reasons for that. It's probably one of the reasons why we do the consulting as Acumatica ERP consultants is to learn these new features. And I must say there's some really interesting and creative solutions that they're starting to add to the product. So we're going to go through a few of those. So just to explain, there's been over 1,000 new features added to this version. So that's between 2025 and 2026. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that we would have to unpack, and we'll be doing that individually with our clients. But we're going to try and highlight some of those items in these sessions that we're going to be doing over the next month. So today we're going to focus on distribution, sales, a bit of inventory, the customer portal, and we're going to try and make it specific to those areas. The next session we're going to look at is around the projects in a few areas. As an example, if you're in construction or you do project work, we'll go through some of those additional features. So I just wanted to discuss a little bit about Acumatica's development strategy. And these are effectively what we call the pillars of their product. And if you think about what Acumatica is doing is they're constantly trying to future-proof themselves and you as a client. So what we mean by future-proofing is making sure that they are looking towards the future and constantly creating that innovation and adapting the software to make sure that they're not left behind, or you as a customer are not left behind. Adaptability, so they change. Obviously, technology moves very quickly. There's challenges, globally, and they have to adapt to those changes and make sure that they're bringing that into the product. Also trying to be very industry specific. So they don't want to have software that, is for every vertical, for every industry. So they make their tiers very specific. I have seen a few ERP systems, where they try and focus in too much and they end up missing the boat in terms of the features that are actually relevant to that specific vertical, as an example, manufacturing. Also, what I've seen is that they focus on, what is the now, in other words, as an example, AI, and they end up losing potentially some of the areas in the product that customers feel have been neglected. And with Acumatica, that is definitely not something that I've seen. They tend to go back in the areas of product where they know potentially customers have felt that it needs improvement, and they do that. And how they do that is through the community, customers like yourselves providing information back to Acumatica or the partners, and that gets delivered into product. User experience, so they're constantly looking at ways of improving the user experience. and I'll go through some of that. And then one of their biggest and most of, I think, the companies these days are looking at is AI first. So everything around AI first, but not just throwing AI, making it relevant to the product. Okay, so as I mentioned, over 1,000 new features. Here's just a graphic of some of the features. Some of it may not be relevant to South Africa and may only be available in the States, for example. But majority of the features are available to you as a customer when you move on to 2026 R1, and if you are obviously licensed for it. So as mentioned, improved UI and the modern platform, which I'll run through, and then some of the AI automation tools. We did do a session on this. I'm not going to go into detail of this. If you missed that session, I'd recommend you go to erp365.co.za. There is a video on it. Alternatively, reach out to Melissa, and she'll be able to point you in the right direction. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Acumatica actually sponsors a NASCAR. So this is not a made-up picture, and I thought it's quite relevant to put it into perspective in how they, how we look at the software. So, slick on the outside, that's what they've tried to do with the modern UI, but not just creating something that looks nice. There's valid reasons why they've changed to the modern UI. And that a lot of that revolves around customer usability and customer customization. So when I want to modify Acumatica as a customer, they've made that a lot more simple. And what I mean by modify is screen changes or low code, no code. So they're really trying to ensure that they're empowering their customers as opposed to just empowering the partners who can then empower the customers. So we're going to look at under the hood, under the hood being under the hood of 2026 R1, what are the new features? So here's a few of the items we're going to be going through. So cross-sell suggestions, the orchestra new feature, the modern portal that some of you may have heard about already, activity streaming, which is a very nice feature, new tag files that they've got in, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to kick off with the cross-sell. But before I do that, I just wanted to go through Acumatica's AI strategy and if you kind of start to fit it all together, what they're trying to achieve. So there's a level of an help agent. So, even within product, they're looking at how do we help and guide clients, how do we help and guide even partners, and troubleshoot areas within Acumatica. And how they're looking at doing this is interactive assistance. So, you've also got things like how can we make Acumatica work for us in terms of user agents? So, instead of capturing information, is there a way that I can use AI workflows and ensure that there's information that can be automated? Customization assistance. So as I mentioned with the new UI, they're looking at ways to bring in AI into customization so that you don't require a developer, you don't require a partner to a degree. And then automation agents, like I mentioned, you may have a sales agent that looks after leads, and you don't want to go through that whole first process, or maybe it's a second process, or there's information you want. You could put on an AI agent, or maybe the AI agent for lead generation just monitors the activity on those leads. Are we getting back to clients and potential customers? So that's an example of an AI agent. And then obviously digital twins. So then that again is not removing a physical body or an employee, but empowering them, and that's obviously what we call is that digital twin to help out. Okay, so the first part I'm going to go through. Unfortunately, I love doing interactive sessions with the system, but the cross-sell suggestions, this is one of those ones that needs to build up over time. So I'm going to just speak you through this. So cross-selling, upselling is available in Acumatica, but it's manual. So what I mean by manual is you've got to suggest and you've got to tell it what should be a related item, or if I'm cross-selling. So what Acumatica has done is they've built AI into that, and they are then there's obviously a few settings that you have to add. You have to tell it that you maybe want this product to be looked at as part of the suggested selling. And then what it'll do is as you progress and as you do your more and more of your sales, it's going to recommend what those suggestions should be, what your cross-sell suggestions should be based on what people are buying. So if they buy this, they generally buy this. If they buy that, they buy that. Or generally, if you buy a laptop, as an example in this, they buy a laptop bag, mouse, etc. And then it's got a weight into it. So, you could say, well, what's the number one? I don't want to give them a whole shopping list, so let's weight it. If it's maybe the top 2 items that people generally buy with that item, weight those higher and only show those. So very, very nice feature, especially it's, again, taking out that manual interaction or manual way you would have to do your suggestions and bringing that into Acumatica. And then over here, you can't really see it nicely, but you could click on here and then it'll actually show you the related items. They're obviously also going to start using this in the customer portal. So, when you're buying an item and you want those related items to come up, and I will show a bit of the customer portal or the modern portal a bit later. Okay, auto orchestration assistant. So this is a new feature that they've introduced. And in a nutshell, this is really to help the management of orders in terms of if you've got decentralized warehouses, even if you've got a centralized warehouse and you need to ship that out, there's ways that the system can automate that for you. So I'm going to take you through an example of this, but if you think about, for those of you that have ever bought online, and I'm sure most of us have, you just put in an address, and in the background, that company may have a warehouse, they may have a 3PL that they're using for delivery or collection. In the background, that is suggesting to the company where it's being bought from, where it should be shipped from. So that's what Acumatica is trying to do with this product, and it's a lot more detailed than just what I'm saying to. Also, what it can do is help with safety stocks. So, instead of just choosing a warehouse because they've got stock, maybe I don't want that warehouse to be chosen. So you can say, well, take safety stock into account when it's looking at the orchestra, in other words, where it's choosing where I should deliver that from. So we're just going to go into a demo here quickly. So if I go into sales orders. Okay, so just under the hood, this is just a demo company that we've created. So as an example here, I've added an order. This is a USD-based company, but obviously, most of the companies would be in rands. So here I've added an order, and what I'm buying here is a Lamborghini, I wish, but in reality, for the demo, this is what we're doing. So here I've asked to purchase 2, or the customer's asked to purchase 2. Now, at this stage, most of you have on hand and available, and it gives me a little overview of, what stock I have available. It doesn't necessarily help in telling me where else I could, deliver this from. So what you can do with Orchestra is, as I mentioned, you'd add rules. So maybe it could be based on, and it's based on your shipping. So, where are we shipping this from? It's central, and the ship by. So what it'll do is you set up rules and you say, okay, well, if it's central, I want this warehouse and this warehouse, or location based, and there's other options available as well. So in this example, I'm just using central. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I'm not 100% sure. So clearly I've only got one stock. Where else can I potentially do it from? So if you click on your 3 dots, you'll see it says orchestrate order. I'm going to click on the orchestrate order. Now what the system's doing in the background is it's going and checking everything. Where's my stock holding? What have I suggested on the orchestra policies that I've set up? And it's telling me now you have available in retail and wholesale. So I could then save this, and then it would actually create that shipping request from those specific warehouse locations. So very nice feature in my view. It is something that a lot of the e-commerce sites have, like I mentioned earlier. So it makes sense for Acumatica to build this into the background. Okay, then I'm just going to get back to the next feature. Okay, so Orchestra, like I said, it is has been released in 2026 R1. Okay, the customer modern portal. So, I think this has been an area where the portal's always been one of those things where very good feature, but the look and the feel over time has maybe not been what it should. They've added a lot of things for the states. We're looking at ways to incorporate that as ERP 365. So, as an example, things like payment gateways and things that you can do that makes the customer, not have to go out of the system and do payments and so forth. So, um, for those of you that haven't used the portal, don't know about the portal, Acumatica provides a customer portal where your customers can log on and do things like B2B. They can look at sales orders, the current sales orders. If you had the payment gateway linked in, you could actually pay for an order or pay an invoice, do a prepayment, and you could do that through the customer portal. You can look at things like documents. So, maybe I want to look at my statement, or maybe I want to look at a previous invoice. You can view that on the portal. It's also restricted. So maybe you have certain users within the organization that do purchases. So they would use the B2B part of the portal, but you don't necessarily maybe want them to see financial information. So you can limit the users who can log onto the portal. So you set up a contact against your customer, and then they would get a login, and then they'd be able to access the portal. So I'm just going to log into the portal. So as I mentioned, some of you may or may not have seen the portal. So in this case, I've created a user, and I'm going to log in as them. Okay, the nice thing about the portal as well, which I think a lot of people don't realize, is that it's not like I've got a separate site that I've got to maintain and do a whole lot of things with. It actually sits on top of the same database. So therefore, any updates that I do, any chat transactions that I do, it's immediately available in the portal itself, because it's a site that sits on top of the same database, but also my restrictions. So, if I'm a user, like I mentioned, and I say that they can't look at X, Y, and Z, then that filters through to the portal. So look and feel, for those of you that saw the original portal, it has changed. On the left-hand side, as I mentioned, depending on what you've got access to, if I was a company that was using the case support system, and it was maybe a product defect, I could log a case directly on the portal. And then, that it's that assisted services, that you apply to your clients. I can view cases, so is there any cases that are pending and I maybe want to follow up? I could review my statement history. If there was invoices and balances, I could go and view that. And as I mentioned, on the current portal that the states have access to, you can proceed to pay here, and it'll take you to your credit card payment method. So it's something we're looking at, and I think it'll add huge value to the portal. If I wanted to look at my orders, so maybe I've placed an order, I don't have anything at the moment that's open or unpaid. If I click on all, you can see all of my original orders that I have. Again, full drill down, so maybe I want to go and view that order, see if there was anything on it, and I get all of the information plus some images around and the items that I've purchased. I can also copy order to a cart. So maybe I had an order that I originally placed, and I wanted to just make a duplicate copy of that and process it instead of having to go to the cart and go and access it. I could do that. I could also print on my orders. Okay, then on the catalog, so a little bit similar to like a Shopify or a WooCommerce. They've made it very nice for the look and the feel. It's very modern. Images like they had on the previous one, but it's just a lot more slick. So here, if I had to add anything, and how the portal works is it's based on your catalogs, your sales item catalogs in Acumatica. So if you add an item to your sales category item list, you will see it show. So in this case, let's just see if I've got my Lambo here. Okay, and there it is. I haven't added a photo at the moment, but I would then add that to the cart. It's for free. So Yeah, it's definitely not the case, but let's just go back to one that we would. So I'd simply then go on to, let's say it was the bottle and I wanted to add it, I would just add that to the cart and then go through the whole process of doing a checkout, which then obviously loads the order on the system. And in the background, you would do your normal pick, pack, ship or your shipment. And then, yeah, so very, very very modernized. They add in a lot to this, I can see. The other thing that was they've changed the ways is the way you set up a portal. So, and I'm just going to quickly go through that. So in Acumatica, the portal sort of user interface and that to set it up wasn't the best. So they've changed it and they've allowed multiple portal configurations. See, I've just been logged off because I was logged onto the portal. So I'm just going to go back in here. So one of the things that they have done, which is quite nice with the portal, is they've created the ability to create multiple portals. And what I mean by that is you may have a select group of customers. Maybe you're a company that has multiple divisions. You sell cars, maybe you sell, furniture as another part of the company. You could separate those portals so that it's client specific. So when I log onto a specific portal, if I add that contact, it goes directly to the furniture portal or the car portal as an example. Okay, so this is where I would set up the portal. Like I say, this has changed in this version. A lot more user friendly. You can see now the way I can say what is available on this specific portal. Who are the users linked to this portal? So you can see there was good old Harper, who I added. Portal settings, add in images, logos, and then obviously the defaults surrounding this portal. So what branches is it restricted to, warehouses, and various things that you can do. As an example, if I was using the CRM. So a very good feature. The only downside at the moment, if I can put it that way, and is that if you've got current customizations on the portal, you can't deploy those yet. There's reasons for it. They will allow that eventually, but at the moment, if you've had a customization to the portal, you wouldn't be able to use this at the moment. But I think that'll change very soon. Okay, so if you haven't used the portal, or if you weren't aware of the portal, or it's something you'd like to look at, especially around B2B. Then reach out to us and we can definitely do an in-depth demo on this. Obviously, it's not it's not open to the world. So in other words, you do have to be a registered user on Acumatica. So different to a Shopify, for example, or Takealot, where I can just go on and purchase something. You would have to be an existing customer and then a contact on the Acumatica instance. So it's purely B2B. Okay, let's get back to our next feature. Okay, so that's the modern portal. I've just did a graphic image there. Okay, so something that's maybe not critical to most users, but what they've started to do is tag in on your file. So and a few reasons for this is you could be searching for, so there's something called a file search, and I will show that just now, where you may be looking for certain files, or you want to see what's been uploaded, or it's just messy, so you don't necessarily have a nice filing system, and maybe you don't want people to be able to see certain files within the organization. So what Acumatica's started to do is they've now allowed tags against your file. So you can then add that tag to the file when you upload it, and you can do restrictions based on that tag category. So as an example, you can see I added cars, and I've said that only anonymous people can view it. I did add administrator later because I couldn't see it eventually, but that is a way that you could then start to tag your files. It helps with search indexes. It helps with searching for files. It just cleans up the system. And like I mentioned, is then you can also start to restrict certain files based on certain roles or users within the system. Okay, let's have a look at that one quickly. Okay, so if you do file tags, so I'm just going to show the management side of it. Okay, so there you can see is my file tags. So if I had to type a tag, whether it's project, so in this case it's pre-construction, or I could tag that. Let's say I was busy with a project or on a site. So some of our clients do shopping centers where they sort out some of the shopping centers. So maybe I would have a specific category which just relates to that specific project, or just relates to projects, and I could then incorporate those specific files into that. Okay, so it is a feature that I think they're gonna keep changing. It's gonna be new features coming out that relate to this. So as an example here, you could see if I just wanted to do my cars tag. Okay, then it shows me what has been linked to that, and there's my Lambo pictures. Okay. Okay, so next feature I'm going to go through. Oops, sorry. Okay, activity stream and AI summary. So I think what's definitely improved in these AI tools is the ability to take a whole lot of data. There's so much data overload and so much information these days that you've got to trawl through in systems, and that's what I'm starting to see where the power of AI is starting to come in. So if you take like lead management, or if you take case management, that you're busy with, there's a lot of information, especially if you're an outsider to that lead. You want to quickly find out where are we with that lead or that case, or should I be concerned about some of my lead management? Are my salespeople doing what they should? So what Acumatica is starting to do is really sift and go through that data and provide summary versions of it. I did go through a bit of this in LLM. I'm going to go through it again because I think the two fit in quite nicely. So there's the activity stream, which they've released now. And then there is the LLM portion, which allows me to get information back from the system, but in a condensed version that is accurate, and then I can make informed decisions on it. Okay, so let's get into that demo. Okay, so let's say I had an opportunity that I was busy with, or I had an opportunity that somebody was busy with, or a customer's phoned me, or a potential lead and said, they're not hearing from the salesperson, or it was a lead that I started with and I've handed over, and I want to find out information about that lead. Where are we? So what Acumatica has allowed you to do, and it's through the AI module, you would have to purchase LLM for this. So that is the additional area where I can then feed it to something like OpenAI, if you were at the previous session I did, and then it would go and get information, bring it back, and you can do updates, you can do certain things. So in this case, the activity stream, which doesn't require AI, but it does use AI in the background. So there's no licensing module or additional cost for this component. But let's say I had a lead. You can see it gives me a nice view of the type of activities that have occurred. Now, keep in mind, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you're not going to process your information in Acumatica when it comes to lead management, you're not going to obviously have information like this. But if you do it properly, it's nice to show you, it's obviously seen, well, I called the client, set up an email, I had a scheduled meeting, and it gives you a nice overview. And you can then go and sort by date. Maybe you want to see the latest correspondence. So here I can see this customer is definitely not buying from us because, or this lead, the last time I communicated was in 2023. So nice feature, nice clean feature, allows you to quickly get information. But let's say I can see, this customer is probably irate. Or I don't have time to go through all of the activity, so maybe give me a summarized status of where we're at with this lead. So if I click on the summary, The AI is going to go and interrogate the information. Like I mentioned, this is a license module, so you would have to purchase the LLM license of Acumatica and then link it to a LLM provider like OpenAI, like we recommended in the previous session. So here's an example of, the sentiment, and it's saying it's satisfied. The reason why is because obviously this is demo site, but the customer hasn't come back to us. The last information may have been, that we had a good session and vice versa. So obviously it depends on what dates it's servicing. But what's great about it, and you can do this, you can modify this like I showed in the previous session around what the next steps should be. So, this is obviously based on instructions that you've told the AI agent to do. But you could say, give me certain information, or I could flag this as part of the automation and do something like a notification. So although I'm running this and it's reactive, I could build in a scheduler that goes and checks these leads, provides a summary, and then based on, let's say, the sentiment, I could then acknowledge a notification. So then raise this to the sales manager as an example. Okay, so two very again, where you can see they're starting to use AI, but that very nice features where it's quickly accessing that information, giving me informed decisions. And I think you're going to see a lot of these type of things within Acumatica, as they move through the stages. Also, this for those of you that haven't seen side panels, maybe you're on an older version. This was a feature that was released where it's called side panels. Side panels, and we and yourselves as customers do have the ability to create side panels. So instead of doing this drill downs, I can get information on the side panel. Could be about a sales order as an example, and I click on the sales order and it gives me the information on the side panel. Okay, so that's what side panels are. From here, they've added things like I can create an email then, so immediately again, based on here, I could say, oof, this customer's, this leads an issue. Let's get back to them and create an email, create a task. Okay. So again, I think just getting back to, the activity stream, I think you're going to see that a lot. I'm starting to see it in the case systems. It's just a very molded way to get information easily, and so that I don't have to sift through trawls of information. Okay, foreign currency payment and payment methods. So I'm not going to show necessarily this one, which is the payment method, but I could have, so what they've allowed you to do is add additional information on your payment method that the user would obviously have to fill out when they're doing it. Partly why they've also done this is so that you don't just get garbage on some of the information, when you're doing the payment. So I can have very specific information as well as the format. So in other words, if I'm maybe requesting something about a date, I can choose a date picker as opposed to just free text where, that the users can type in anything. Okay, so on the payment, the other one is and I'll go through that a bit later if there's time, is when I'm doing my payments, they've allowed for the currency to automatically be based on, what the potential vendor is, as opposed to you having to manage that exchange rate. Very nice feature. I think a lot of clients it's something that obviously a lot of clients have been mentioning to Acumatica, and it's good to see that they've added that. So if there's time, we'll go through that. Okay. Again, shop for kiosk. So I think one of the the tools that's probably underrated in Acumatica is the mobile app. I would start to recommend looking at the mobile app, seeing that they're definitely doing a lot more work in the mobile app. So what they've done recently and in this version is they've added something called shop floor kiosk. So what this allows you to do is using the mobile technology or mobile app technology. If I was in manufacturing and I was busy with a production or a job, and I'm going to go through this, but it's a way to quickly capture information using an in-out clock-in system using the mobile app. Okay, so let's get that started up. Okay, excuse this version. It's an easier way to just show the mobile capability without having to do mirroring. And sometimes we have issues with mirroring. So um, this is going to log on. Okay, so for those of you that have seen the mobile app, um, this is what the view would be. I just want to see if I can maybe. Okay, the screen. That's fine. Okay, so as I mentioned, depending on what you have access to, very similar to an Acumatica, well, exactly like in Acumatica. If I didn't have access to all of these things, I wouldn't be seeing it. So it would be very specific. So in this case, I wanted to show the manufacturing component, which is my clock-in system. So if I had to click on here, you'll see there's clock entries. And obviously, if you didn't have access to certain things, you wouldn't have the capability to do it. So I'm going to just click on clock entry. Okay. And obviously, if I'm specifying, and this would be because I'm an admin, I'm seeing everybody. But in this case, if it was specific to me, it would only show me. I wouldn't be able to see everybody. So I'm going to just search for myself. Okay. Come on, screen. Okay, it's just busy. Okay, and there you can see I was busy on this order previously, but let's say I wanted to go back into that order. Okay, and this is, I'm just doing an inspection. So I could be walking around with my mobile device, and let's say part of my profile or my job role was to go and inspect items, as it's going through the QC process. Now, there's obviously cost to that. You could use this as statistical reporting, so maybe getting insights into, the labor in your production environment. Or you could actually then go, and if this user was set up to capture, rates and labor, and there was cost to it, I could include those in the actual production order and get my production recoveries. So here I'm going to clock in. So now I've clocked in. Okay, and it's what it's doing is it's capturing the information as I'm working through this. So here I could. So it's just a bit of a lag on this at the moment. So let's say I want to do. I've checked now one quantity. I've inspected the one. I'm happy with it. If I clock out, and obviously this is touchscreen as well. So if you're on your mobile, you could touch it. And there you can see now it's captured the entry. Now, if I had to go into Acumatica, so let's just check this production order 412. Okay, you'll see a few things. So obviously you don't want people just adding time potentially. So you could do an approval process. So, in my case, I want to check, what the guys are doing. And maybe some of them I've got an approval. So they don't try and overinflate the labor that they've put onto my production. So if I click on my approved clock entries, okay, and if all goes well, you'll see that I've now have clocked in, and that is the time that I spent on it. And then I could approve this. Also, you can scrap as well. So what's nice about it is if you've built a customization at the moment that allows you to, through the mobile app, maybe do the waste, or if I was in inspection and I can just quickly capture the waste. So on that screen, I could have captured waste as well, and then it would go through the approval process. If I click on process, it's going to write this to my production order. So again, using the mobile device without a user having to log into Acumatica, I could customize a screen, make it very specific to their operation. So if they're only involved in QC, then we could give them that access and make it a lot easier for them to capture their time. Okay, so that's a shop floor kiosk. As I mentioned, there's a lot more you can do with it. Like you can see here is labor, scrap, and again, it's without having to sign into Acumatica. They also have the in-out time system now in cases. So as an example, if you're working on a case, maybe it's or a lead even, and you just want to capture some time to that because time is money, you could then go and use that feature. Again, if you don't use it, it's not going to be relevant. So there is a bit of admin involved, but I do think there's benefits, especially around production environments like that, or case systems where it could be helpful. Okay, so modern UI, as I mentioned, I think people underestimate and the amount of work that's gone into the modern UI. There's very valid reasons why it's taken a bit of time, why they've slowly integrated it into product, why they've allowed users and customers to maintain the classic versions, what we call it. So what Acumatica has allowed, just to explain that, is they've released the modern UI, and you have basically three options. I can retain the classic UI, so I can say, I don't want to go on the modern UI yet, and that could be because of customizations. So I just want to maintain classic UI, and when I'm ready, I will switch over to the modern UI. I could change my entire site to the modern UI. So in 2026 R1, I can say, let this entire site be modern. And then what I could do is, if I had customizations in some of the legacy screens or the classic screens, I could just enable those. So where we've seen some challenges is where I've got user-defined fields. So there is a little process that you have to do to modernize that screen. But those are the options when you have it. It does appear like in 2026 R2, if memory serves me, they're going to eventually force clients to only use the modern UI. So there is time. But as we're going through upgrades with our clients, we are managing expectations and starting to suggest to move to the UI and then have a look at the developments that you have. So I'm just going to go through a very quick example of where they've made it very easy. So for those of you that have had Acumatica for quite a while, and you've been using the classic version or classic UI, generally changes to the screen, add in user-defined fields, it's a little bit cumbersome, and it was quite hard, and you'd have to get a developer to deploy a customization. So what Acumatica has done now to give you, the customer, the power and to modify certain things and add things to screens, they've allowed you to have this, the modern UI, and to modify it. So just as an example, and I'm just going to quickly switch between classic and the UI. So for those of you that are, you've bought Acumatica recently, or you haven't seen maybe the classic UI, is I can just switch back to the classic UI. It's going to notify me that this is for all users, and then it'll change to Acumatica's classic view of the customer's screen. Okay, so it's just switching back now. Okay. Depending on who you speak to, some consultants like this, some consultants don't, some customers do, some customers don't. I think the reality is yes, there's a look and feel that is more crisp and modern, but it's the under the hood that really makes this powerful. So if you look here, not too much I can do. I can drag a few things maybe around, and like these type of things, I can filter certain things out, but that's kind of what I'm limited to. If I switch then back to the modern UI, okay, and I think that's been one of the things, like when we go into client sites, the screen can get busy. So often, we would either hide fields or do certain things. So what they allow you to do as the customers is to clean up your own screen. Now, if I click on the cog, and I go to UI configuration, so this is the new feature. If you go to modern, you'll see that I then get this toolbar at the top, and I can do certain things there. So I can reset to default, so maybe I change it so much that I now don't even can't find fields that I'm looking for, and you can reset to default. I can manage user-defined fields, load personal configuration. So what you can do is maybe in one tenant you've got a configuration that you've created, and you want to add it to another tenant. You could import and export your UI for the specific screen, and I can apply to all, or I can make it just for myself. So when I click on that, one of the other pieces you'll notice is I start to get cogs everywhere. So cog is going to be a place where I can do configuration changes. So if I click on here as an example, it comes up with a screen, and it's going to then give me the elements that I can start to add or move around to that screen. So if I had attributes as an example, and I wanted to just drag it into the screen, or relevant information, about that specific customer that you've added, you could then go and drag it into this view. So let's just say, as an example, I wanted to show the customer class. Then I also have these options here where I can pin it, or I can make it an invisible. So maybe, you've got it quite cluttered, so you don't want to see, as an example, customer class, and I could hide it. But in this case, I'm going to pin it, I'm going to apply, and there is my customer class. Now, I can apply to all, like I said. If I apply to all, you overwriting either your personal configuration, or you are overwriting your, the default for everybody. Okay, so nice, clean, crisp way. As I mentioned, if you see the cog, you'll see it on some of the screens. It's not available on everything. I think over time they will get there, and that's part of the changes that they're doing. Also, they're making a whole lot of things low code, no code in the screen changes, which I'm not going to go through too much now. We will have a technical session around some of the low code, no code, and the UI. But that's really where they're starting to move this forward. And it's why they've had to take time to do this. So they've tried to make as low or reduce the disruption to clients when they move on to this modern UI, and they've had to make sure that the changes that they're doing, it's not going to impact functionality, whilst they add in these changes. Okay, so other things, like if you look at the dashboards, for those of you that haven't seen, I'm just going to open a project one. Okay, so I know I said we're going to do projects later, which we will, but I'm just going to use this dashboard as an example. So let's say I was, like I mentioned, I was doing a shopping center, and there was multiple things obviously going on with this project. I could use this dashboard, and this is become available as part of the modern UI. I could go in and look at my projects, go and see what's going on. Obviously, it depends what information's in here at the moment, and it'll then go and update the dashboard accordingly and provide the relevant information. And again, you've got these side panels, so also part of why they've done the modern UI, and then I can go and get additional information. So instead of having to jump between modules within Acumatica, or to drill down, and then have to go back because I need to go back to this previous screen or open another tab, I can then get that relevant information. And like I mentioned previously, is with tagging, and there is a way that you can now add, with the ability to add the file types and the tags and that category. There's nothing in here, but you could then have exposure just to the relevant files that have been added to the information here. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that with the modern UI. As mentioned, things just to look out for, just to recap, is you do have the option to remain on classic, so you don't immediately have to go to the modern UI. If you are going to the modern UI, be aware that if you do have customizations, potentially you would have to redo some of those customizations. But once it's redone, the nice thing is then going forward, to add user fields, to do certain things where you would normally have to do a customization, that becomes available to you as the client. Okay, let's have a look at what's next. Okay, so we've gone through modern UI. I just want to run through a few items that they've added. Like I said, there's a lot of new features, so I'm not going to be able to unpack everything in this session, but supply chain and inventory, so in transit inventory, although Acumatica does kind of show you, when you've got an item in transit, there has been a bit of a void, and especially around, DRP and MRP, where you need to know if I'm about to receive something, make sure that I don't duplicate my ordering. So what they've done is they've allowed, they've made a change where they give you a lot more information around the in-transit inventory, which helps when I'm doing my MRP runs to avoid overstocking or understocking. Okay, then approval for inventory adjustments. So, again, strengthening controls. And this is obviously not related to stock take, but if I'm doing an adjustment in the system and there's a workflow and approval that is now available, standard Acumatica, which I think is a great feature, and it ensures that you're not just able to do adjustments, even though you've got the access. There may be an approval process for that. Change picking locations on the fly. So I think this is one of those things where the mobile, and that's why I say, that the mobile, they are the WMS system, that they are revisiting this continually and making, enhancements and changes to it. So changing picking locations on the fly, depending on certain rules that you've set up, instead of having potentially, especially if somebody's new to the warehouse, you don't want a lot of thinking to go on. You want them to be able to be efficient for the warehouse to move. So you can build in certain rules and you can change that location on the fly based on certain rules when you're actually doing the pick-in process or the put-away process. Okay, I just want to get back to, I think there is a bit of time, so I'm going to go through just enable. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, I did it in the AI automation session, is that, Acumatica does release a lot of features. Sometimes it's a beta feature. And what I mean by that is that they've heard about it from clients. They want to build it into their software, but they don't want to release it yet. They want to either work out all the tweaks and the kinks, or they want to look at the adoption. So maybe it sounds like a good idea, but they're not 100% sure. So they add it as part of their roadmap, and then they'll create an experimental feature. So a lot of the items that we show or discuss or start to become aware of is in the experimental features. Sometimes as a customer, you can opt to use an experimental feature. So as an example, the AI assistant, you can, if you're on 2026 R1, the AI assistant being this one, for those of you that weren't in the session, where if I wanted to see my open invoices, let's just say a list of overdue invoices, I can ask it a question and then it'll come back with the relevant information. It'll then give me some advice about that. This one is available for free if you're on 2026 R1, and when I say for free, just whilst it's in beta testing, and then from 2026 R2, when they officially release it, then you'll be able to purchase the module. So often, there is instances where Acumatica will have these, and as a customer, you can beta test it. You do have to sign forms to get it available, and then they'll add it to your license. So if we look at what they are bringing out, and I'm just going to go through one or two of them. I will do a demo on this one specifically in one of the next parts is Insight XL. So to give you an idea of what Insight XL is so for those of you that have ever used Velexo or the ARM reports is quite cumbersome to set up. If it's hard to make changes, if I export it, I can't really refresh it. So what Acumatica's looked at is they've said, how do we make that as more simple, improve on their reporting stack. So what they've done is they've created something called Insight XL. Now what that allows me to do, and we have confirmed with Velexo, and they will be sending out a statement, so I'm not going to go into too much details, but there is very specific reasons why I would remain on Velexo and why I would potentially look at Insight XL, once they release it. So for now, Insight XL only will be able to export your ARM reports. Okay, so different to Velexo, where I can export and refresh GIs. So in other words, your generic inquiries, and refresh those, you wouldn't have access to that. You also don't have features like the write back. So I wouldn't be able to write back into Acumatica, and Velexo is releasing something fairly soon. I don't want to mention it yet, but I think it's a very exciting part of their software that they're going to be releasing. I can just say it's going to make your reporting a lot easier and your creation of your Velexo reports a lot easier. But what Acumatica is allowed to do, so if I have my profit and loss as an example, my balance sheet, I could go into the ARM report. So let's say, and I'm just going to, okay, so then you can see my AI assistants come back with information. Let's just go to my finance, profit and loss. Okay, so let's say I don't want to always go into Acumatica. I want to refresh these on periodically in Excel, because a lot of us use Excel, and it's a lot of the accountants like to use it, and it's an easier way to add additional information. Maybe I want to add formulas. Maybe it's the P&L, and I'm tracking my budget, and I want to make comments or whatever the case may be. If I had to run it, and I don't know if there's going to be any values in here, there should be. Okay, you've always had the export to Excel, but what they have now is the export Excel connected. Okay, once I export to Excel connected, I get an add-in, so I have to sign into Excel like I do on Velexo. It signs me into Acumatica, and then I have the ability to refresh that report. And similar to Velexo, I can refresh incremental, so only refresh what's been changed. But they have a few additional features which Velexo doesn't have in terms of the ARM report. So I think this is a good session, to go through and to join. But as mentioned, it's only for the ARMed reports at the moment. Okay, if we go back to some of the other new features. Okay, so this 360 dashboard, that's that one that I showed earlier, the project status. And if you think that's where they're trying to give you that insight into, so I don't have to go through multiple areas, and I can just focus on what I need to focus. That 360-degree dashboard is what I can see they're going to start to leverage things like AI and that, and build those into those dashboards. So, if you deal with heavy projects, it's going to be a great dashboard which you can utilize going forward. Okay, so if we just get back to some of the things that relates to Item Assistant, I spoke about that earlier. Teams integration, not a big one that a lot of clients use, but I could have Teams integration built into Acumatica, and I can use it in various areas. I can chat, I can do certain things. So is a nice way but there is quite a bit of setup that you have to do for that integration. I might do a session on that, as one of the technical updates. And then sales territory management, they've got case commitments. So, the SLA, they've got an SLA, but I think they're obviously continuously improving on it. And that is something that, I think, again, if you look at these are only some of the items that they have on their roadmap. They've got a lot more. And they definitely are allowing. What I do see is often when I look at this, it used to be like 1 or 2 or 3 items. This list just keeps growing and growing and growing. And what I really admire about them is they're not just rushing to go and add a feature. They want to make sure that feature is relevant. It's gone through the paces. As a client, you've checked it. As a partner, we've checked it before they release it into market. So only proviso on these is if you do, select to be part of the beta testing, and we will send out information about that, is some of these don't get released into product, and it does warn you. So we'll advise, this is definitely going to be going to product, but for now, if you want to get that early adoption and experience, then speak to us, and we can get you an adopter license to utilize it. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. Give back everybody a few minutes. Melissa will be reaching out to you to run through and just see. There is a poll, but I think we're going to run out of time. I'm going to enable it, so if you wouldn't mind just ask, give some feedback as to the session, if you enjoyed it, and would you like to see more of the features. And Melissa will be reaching out to the people that have attended, and to go through your journey. If you're not on the 2026 R1 journey yet, how can we get you there? There is some changes to the licensing structure. If you are an existing client that bought a license, or you were with Acumatica, I'd say probably more than 2 years ago, if you had purchased a license or you purchased Acumatica, you would have got the old license. And there is a bit of details that we have to go through. So you've got to move on to the new licensing model. If you didn't purchase Acumatica recently, in order to use the AI automation, certain features like Orchestra is only available on that new license structure. But that is a journey that we need to go through with each client, and to move you on to the new feature. I would recommend doing it sooner rather than later. You're going to start missing out on some of the features, and the whole way they've changed their licensing, and that is required also from a technical component, but also they don't want to get to a point where they like Microsoft, and it's there's 1,001 different ways that they can license, and the costing method becomes a nightmare. So I do get why they're moving clients onto there, and they've tried to make it a lot more simple if you purchase in Acumatica. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy your day further, and we will be sending out part 2, probably be, like I say, within the next month. And yeah, feel free to advise Melissa if there's certain things that maybe you want to see, or you felt was missing, or that we can improve in these sessions. Feel free to mention it to her. Yeah, enjoy your day further, and thanks very much for attending.